Reading aloud for you from my novella Goddess, Chapter 3. 24 hours earlier, in another part of town. Helen died during the night. The moments leading up to Helen's death had been torturous and hard, long and agonizing. In the week leading up to their mother's death, the sisters had kept vigil over her. They regretted everything. They regretted nothing. They remembered the happy moments and the not so happy moments. And yet it did no good to recall the happy moments, for they lent no relief. And at last the sisters stopped talking, for there remained nothing more to say. They sat at her bedside. They stroked her hands. They talked to her. They consoled her. They consoled each other. And then they settled back to wait, to watch, and to weep. Every time Helen's brow furrowed, the nurses advised the sisters it evidenced pain. And so the sisters consulted with one another and agreed to authorize increasing dosages of morphine to address the pain. And the nurses complied. Every 30 minutes, a nurse entered the room and gently opened Helen's mouth, placed a needleless syringe into the pocket of her cheek, and pushed a plunger containing 15 milligrams of morphine into her body. It administered instant pain relief, but the relief was not without its price, for at the same time that the morphine seeped into Helen's bloodstream, it also slid her just a little bit lower and a little bit faster down that long hill toward the bottom. And once Helen reached it, there was no turning away. This was it. The sisters knew what they were doing, and they hated themselves for it. But they knew the pain was unbearable, and that it gave Helen a moment's respite from the very real agony and the very real work of dying. For that was exactly what was happening here. She was dying. Slowly, inexorably, and horribly. The work of dying. As Madeleine watched her mother struggling to hang onto the life she'd so strenuously lived, and as the warring forces raged within her mother's frail body, Madeleine thought to herself, "What else, God? Dear God, what else can I possibly do to help my mother's passing, while at the same time wishing to keep her alive?" She didn't want to lose her mother. She wanted her mother to live, to keep a protective eye out over her, for she still needed her. And yes, she wanted her mother to nag her. Yes, she did. She wanted her mother to nag her and harangue her, and she wanted her mother to tell her, for perhaps the 10,000th time, the story of when she worked on a hospital ward as a nurse during the war, and a drunken sailor got admitted for treatment, and he'd been so drunk that at one point he yanked off his pants and ran around the ward butt naked and screaming. Yes, even though she'd heard that story at least 10,000 times, perhaps even 10,001 times, and could recite it verbatim herself, complete with all her mother's dramatic pauses and inflections, that's how many times she'd heard it, she longed to hear it one last time from her mother's lips. It was the evening of October the 17th, a Wednesday, when the sisters finally quit their mother's bedside and left the nursing home.